In order to determine how much the monopoly should produce and at what price, we need to compare marginal revenue to marginal cost. Now we can do this numerically, or we can do this on a graph. Graphically, what we do first is we plot the demand curve. So we take the quantities and the prices, and we plot them on our graph. So at a quantity of 0, we're at 80. At a quantity of 1, we're at 76. At a quantity of 2, we're at 72. At a quantity of 3, we're at 68. And we continue plotting all of these points to get the demand curve. So at a quantity of 9, we're at 44. And that dot was slightly off. And then we connect the dots to get our demand curve. Next thing to plot is our marginal revenue curve. When we have a quantity of 1, the marginal revenue is 76. When we have a quantity of 2, the marginal revenue is 68. When we have a quantity of 3, the marginal revenue is 60. When we have a quantity of 4, the marginal revenue is 52. When we have a quantity of 6, the marginal revenue is 44. So quantity of 5, we're at 44. At a quantity of 9, the marginal revenue is 12. And so we connect these dots to get our marginal revenue curve. So I'll just label these curves right here. Here's our demand curve. Here's our marginal revenue curve. Monopolies want to maximize their profits, and so they look at marginal revenue and marginal cost. So let's add in a marginal cost curve. And I'll label this the marginal cost curve. Since the monopoly is the only supplier in the market, the marginal cost curve is the same as the supply curve would be if we had a number of individual firms. So when we look on this graph, let me just change the color so we can see these different points. The point at which supply meets demand tells us the price and quantity we would see in a perfectly competitive market. In a perfectly competitive market, the price would be about $58, and the total quantity produced would be about 6 units. We want to compare this to what the monopoly would produce. Well, a monopoly will produce until marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Here, marginal revenue equals marginal cost at 5 units. How much would the monopoly then charge? Well, they could charge at cost. That is, they could charge about $45. But a monopoly has power over price. And so why would they want to charge at price at cost when they could maximize their profits? And so instead of charging $45, the perfectly competitive firm will consider how much consumers are willing to pay for those 5 units. So we go up until we reach the demand curve. So at a quantity of 5 units, consumers are willing to pay $61. This maximizes the monopoly's profits, and we can see that by adding in the average total cost curve. So let me add in the average total cost curve here to our graph. and label it. We can see that at a price of $61, the monopoly is charging more than it costs to make the 5 units, so they're making economic profit. How much is the economic profit? Well, we look at the difference between the price and how much it costs to make it. So what you see here shaded in yellow is the economic profit for the monopoly. Monopolies charge higher prices than perfectly competitive markets. They produce less than perfectly competitive markets. And unlike the perfectly competitive firm, a monopoly can make economic profit in both the short run and the long run because of barriers to entry.